Hi friends, welcome back to In This Season, where we're all about growing
and glowing in each season.
Today we're going to be talking about grief. It's a very profound experience that affects every aspect of our lives, including our intimate relationships. So this episode is going to be exploring how grief shows up in our intimate relationships, how each partner can support the grieving partner, and how this all ties in and affects or impacts your romantic or intimate relationship.
You're watching In This Season.
So we're just going to start by, Priscilla, have you experienced any loss in your life?
Oh, yes, I have. I mean, people say I don't look like an orphan, but yeah. That was a compliment I took one of these times. The time I posted something, we don't look like an orphan. I was like, how do orphans look like?
Dark thing to say. You know what? I really wonder about this modern culture and social media and how, in which world does anybody think that it is okay to say
that to someone?
Like that to someone?
That's true. I mean, I want to work social media, they're mad. But anyway, I have experienced grief and I've shared about this publicly on my platform. I lost my dad when I was a young girl, and I lost my mom almost just like a year later.
Wow.
So, I was raised by my maternal aunties, my mom's
Your
sisters.
mamas.
Who I call my mamas. And so I was raised, surrounded by love and, support. But it doesn't take away the fact that you are grieving almost all your life. So,
Okay. In our African setting specifically, we have, maybe I think it could be just general, but I've seen it a lot in our culture where we feel like if it has been that long, how long has it been for you?
I lost do I even remember? I lost my dad as in primary. I think should have been like maybe primary 3 or P4. Then I lost my mom maybe around P5 because I remember I shifted schools as in now what was that place? St. Agnes Nagalama. Any OGs Banange, let us meet in the comments. Then I crossed over to Namagunga St. Teresa's. So I think about 95, P5. That's when I moved. So I think that's when I lost my mom. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's been a while.
So in our African setting, when it's been that long, we tend to think that you've moved on.
Yeah.
Or, it was so long.
It was so long ago. Get over it.
There's even a saying in Luganda that sort of belittles grief, especially old. Okay. What is considered old grief? That says, unosura kumalalo, and you hear that, let's say, if it's even just like a month after you've passed, people will be looking at you still in your process of mourning or in your process of grieving and be like, Shunasula kumalalo, and so do you feel that you've had that? Do you experience that?
Do I experience grief now?
No. That feeling, that judgment from society when you express
my grief, I don't know. I think that I don't know. I haven't experienced it, but I have judged. I have been on the judging side, but also it was from a place of wanting to know for my own grief. Yeah. Okay. I think, usually like how they say you judge in others what you hate in the most in you. So I think because I knew I had my own grief and I know how deep it can be. So when I see someone, there was someone on social media who lost their mom and I knew them. They're not really close friends, but it had been about 5 years. And then every anniversary she would post every word. So because I know how, I recognize it in me, whenever she would post, I would be triggered and I'd be in my head. I would comment. My head, I'm like, because your mom died. It is sad. Move on. You get. So I have judged, I would say, but from a place of I'm running away for my own. But no, I've not experienced me being judged, or maybe I'm judged but silently. I don't know. Yeah. And
I feel like I can partly understand the judgment, particularly when it comes from people who have not lost a parent yet, because I feel like I also used to judge people who one morning years later,
Yeah.
10 years later,
Yeah.
15 years later,
Yeah.
until I experienced the loss myself. Mine happened much later, like 7 years ago. We were grown, done with uni, everything. And only at that point, when I experienced that loss, did I start to understand and judge myself also for judging others before that.
Yeah.
So I do think that, as you've explained, sometimes it comes from a point of...
You're running away from your own things.
Yes, running away from your own things. But then at the other angle, it also comes from just ignorance.
Yeah.
Plain old.
Yeah. And also just a lack of compassion.
Which comes from ignorance.
Yeah. I think also just a lack of compassion, because what kind of ignorance? All of us know that no one is in no one is really coming out of this life alive.
Yeah.
We are all gonna die. But to leave your kids behind, or for someone to mourn their period, it's really deep. So for me, it's not ignorance. It's just not being empathetic.
I think, again, I would refute that,
Yeah.
because you don't, and even when you think you do, it's kind of like childbirth.
And it's something
or
you have to
marriage.
first go through for you to really understand.
There's layers to it.
There is.
It's only when you experience it that you properly understand.
That's true.
Like before, let's say we had it, moving away a little bit, but before I experienced death, I didn't realize how important it is to show up after. We think that the most important part is
the day or
the funeral, you go bury, and
God.
that's it. But it's much worse after, and that's when you are actually needed. But until you experience it, does it even occur to you?
No,
I don't think so.
Yeah.
So the wedding planning process, I know that this is among the things that you mentioned on your socials, that it was difficult for you.
I may even need tissues even thinking about it.
Tell me, how did your grief show up for you? Show up in that period?
I'm getting teary. Lord, not now.
It's okay.
Yeah, it was...
what was running through
my mind?
your mind?
Yeah.
What were the specific triggers?
Yeah.
Tell us about that experience.
It was... I didn't even expect this, guys. I'm trying to keep it up together. Anyway, I think what triggered, so as we're only two kids, me and my brother, and as our only girl. So of course, as daddy's girl, as far as I could remember.
Yeah.
So I felt like preparing my wedding, I really wanted him to be there. And growing up, I had this, I think for every girl, every child has this about their dad. Your dad is a hero. Yeah. So for me, every time I'd experience a very difficult time, I'd always say, I wish my dad was here. So during the wedding preparation, one of the things that was I got so triggered, because I was like, my dad would really be proud of who I am today. Yeah. It was a case of I would really, really love him to be there. And also just like walking me down the aisle. And so it was one of those pretty, I didn't even expect this, But it's quite emotional, because it was just a thing of, I wish my dad was here, Yeah,
I get that. It's okay.
Yeah. So, because I feel like he never got to experience, his children. And even like whenever my grandma would talk about him, he would say, John would be so proud of you.
Oh, my dad's name is John too.
Yeah. So my grandma would be like, John, Jali Musanyufu. So it just, all those emotions. And we also felt like it was such a uniting moment for my family. Like when we grew up, my dad's side wasn't involved because, family drama and all those things. So towards the wedding, we had like a reconciliation. Yeah. They came, they apologized. So we made peace. And so it was quite emotional for me, because I was like, my dad would have just really wanted this. Yeah. So it was, I was triggered, but I was just triggered.
And how did you deal with it?
And I don't even think I told my husband about it.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did you discuss it with him?
I did. I think because it's been a long time since I lost my dad, I felt like, you underestimate how much grief you still have, because I've dealt with it in therapy.
Yeah.
I've talked about it. And, but like on that day, it just hit me. Like, I'm now a grown ass woman. I'm grown, I'm going to have my own kids. And I think also the fear would be, okay, so I'm going to start a family. And even I do this, and we're going to get there. But even I do this with Michael, I'm extremely protective because I feel like I don't want to lose someone else in my life. Yeah. So it's just so many emotions that came up. And I would cry in the shower. I'd cry in the shower. And it wasn't tears of sadness, like it was tears of, look how far we have come. Yeah. If you've lost your parents, you know how life can get. Mm-hmm. As I grew up with lots of love, but it doesn't take away from that thing. Oh my God, see me embarrassing myself.
It's okay.
So yeah, that thing never goes away. Yeah. And my brother was there. I don't even talk about. I didn't want to ask him, like, you were talking me because he musika was my father, and I was asking. I wanted to ask him how was it, but I knew it must have been very emotional. In those shoes. Yeah, for him also, because I feel like he had to grow up from a very young age
and take on this responsibility.
Yeah, like when we have Mikolo at home, of course, so like, so it was it was a nice culmination of coming together as both families, but it didn't take away from the fact that my papa was not there. Yeah.
I feel that because now my loss was different.
Yeah.
It happened much later. So I got to grow up with him. We got to see him, and it was an adult loss.
Yeah.
So whereas, you never stop missing your parent, there's still an element of gratitude that I got to have him.
Now that is what we miss.
Yes, I got to have him for as long as I did.
You always fill in gaps. Yeah. When you're like, who would he have been at this age? Yeah. What would he have liked? So that's why I'm like, so whenever I talk to my friends who have lost their parents older, I'm like, I totally understand the pain, but I feel like you're in a much better place than us who lost them when we were much younger.
Yeah, actually, I'm realizing, when you compare the grieving processes with friends like you who have lost their parents much earlier, I realize that it's easier for us who have lost our parents when we are adults to cope.
Yeah.
Or to heal, because there's also that element of, okay, we had you for this long. It was a life well lived, whereas for some of you, it feels like all of that was taken away from you. So where we have memories, you have
feelings,
hopes and dreams and gaps and wondering.
And you keep wondering.
Stuff.
Yeah, you keep wondering. So like you'd be thinking, who would my dad have been? My dad he loved math. He was a scientist. Would he have he loved his whiskey? Like, so you always have glimpses of who he was, but you really don't know who he would have grown up to be. And so it's one of those things.
I find that for me, the most shocking how grief showed up for me in this process of, getting married, starting a family, all of this was, first of all, I went and met a man that was exactly
I think that must have been very hard.
And it was a shock, I think that there are a lot of memories that grief makes you store away. That you don't realize that you have until you see somebody else shrugging or having the same facial expressions or laughing in the same way. It just felt like his spirit was identical to my husband. And it was such a shock. So where it felt very comforting and very calming, it was also so deeply painful because it just was just like this almost rude reminder of this person that's no longer here, And so you are struggling with those two emotions. The gratitude that we get to experience him again through another person, but also the rude reminder that he's not here and he's never going to be here again. I remember many times during the planning process, especially in early days, where it just hit me for the first time in my life that he's actually never coming back.
He's never coming back. Yeah.
And I don't think it had occurred to me before.
I think it does occur to you, but
it comes in waves.
Yes, it comes in waves. But then when you're celebrating a milestone, I find that it's always harder.
So deep. And now when you have to do like Kwanjula, I would have really loved to skip the Kwanjula if it were up to me. Yeah. Unfortunately, I was marrying a Muganda man from, a very Luganda family. I'm also a Muganda girl from Muganda family. So it was not an option. But if it were up to me, I would have skipped that because of all the things that it brought up. This was the first time that we had hosted people at our home without my dad. My dad was a host among us. He loved to feed people. He loved to take care of people. He was just, and now it was all of us. Useless, Figuring it out. You guys, if you ask me, the question I did it so.
If you're Zeri's relative, we apologize. Mommy, Sonye.
No, we all know because we sat down. I remember we sat down the day before the crunch, and we were all like, he's not here. What are we going to do? We are, so all of us are very chill. We're very, very chill. But Dad was that guy. He's moving around, juggling like 70 things at the same time. Exactly like my husband. At the same time. And for me, a house could be burning and
you're
I
just
would be
sitting,
chilling.
Princess Mode.
You know what I mean? It's just
not that serious.
Yeah, it's not like that. So it was difficult. It was so difficult. I remember the day before, I was just like, how are we going to do this? People are coming. And remember, Angela is very paternal. So his side of the family were coming. And it was just, I wasn't ready for the emotion. In fact, the decision not to post pictures from came from that.
Oh, really?
I felt so emotional. So like I was overwhelmed. In fact, I wasn't okay for like a month, like 2-3 weeks after the function. I wasn't ready for all those feelings.
No, it is.
And so I needed to not add, all these messages and all this external. That's where it came from. It was simply that.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't ready for all that. So it was difficult. And then it showed up again at the wedding. Of course, it was, for me, it was mostly, I really wish you were here. I really wish he met my partner. I wish they would have really gotten it on.
That's interesting. It is sad. And like, I think also for me, another part is because now for you, at least mommy is still there. So for me, of course, I have mothers like who love me to death. But there's just that thing, that goes and you're like, But we thank God. We thank God that we have partners who are supportive, that we have families that are supportive. And for me, I think I just really thank God that, because I know that many people who've lost both parents, their stories are very different from mine. Like life really, really, really changes for the worst. And I don't take that for granted. I know the privilege that I have. And when that person said that thing, I laughed because Bambi, I understood where they were coming from. I mean, like, I think in their case of like, your life is so good, orphans don't have it that good.
Don't go around calling orphans.
It's just
don't go around
We're
telling
dealing with a
people
lot.
that they don't look like orphans. It is rude.
So, so it's one of those things. And I think for me, it's a feeling that I've made peace with. Even like in my therapy, I was talking to my therapist, I was telling her, Dr. Karen, will I ever get over this? And I realized it's probably something that will always be triggered on the big, like in the day-to-day life, I sort of like forget, But like when it's like a highlight of like a major moment, I'm like, oh my God, this would have been something I would have loved. Like when I was at Oxford, I was like, my dad, the way he was an academic, he would have eaten this up, So it's those things that keeps coming back. And I think that grief is very cyclical. Like
it waves.
It comes, it goes. It comes, exactly. Less. So and it's like a seesaw. It doesn't break me anymore. I'm not overwhelmed by it it's not like I lack sleep or anything, but it's there. Like moments come and so.
How do you see it showing up now that you're building a family? Because I feel like you don't realize how much you think of your parents until you are starting a family. I think because the only family you knew was now your family of origin.
Back home,
And so when you're starting to walk that journey, it really brings back a lot of things from your family of origin. How is that for you?
Oh gosh, this is a very emotional episode. What did we think about this topic?
We are human. It's okay.
Anyway, for me, and these things, Michael, you don't know, but don't watch. For the longest time, I was scared of having children and having my own family because Woo! I have experienced that pain of growing up without your parents, that I was like, do I want to bring kids? You know? And then I leave.
Yeah.
I don't want them to feel like the way I felt, you know, as a young kid. And I was extremely loved, yeah. I want to stress that. But I think that in African communities, we don't allow children to grieve.
Yeah.
Or we don't provide spaces for them to grieve. We think children don't understand what's going on. So granted, of course, your family is also dealing with the loss of whoever it is, but also you, the kids, also understand.
Yeah.
So I was for the longest time extremely scared of having kids. And I had to work through that in therapy. I was like, I don't want my kids for them to wake up one day.
And you're not here.
And because my dad, one day at school, my dad was taken to hospital and he never came back.
Was it a short illness?
A very short illness. He had, he complained of headache. He was taken, stayed there for one night. Mommy came back and told us, Daddy has gone. You know, and we just didn't have answers. Gone where? What's happening? So I always go back to my young version, and I don't want my kids to go. So I was very, very scared. And I had to work with God through it. I would tell God, man, you better make me live till 93 if I'm to go and have kids. And it's something that I've worked through. Do I still think about it? I do. You know, I do think about it. But I also know that I'm comforted by the fact that the family that took care of me, I have family that will take care of my kids should, God forbid, anything negative happen. Yeah. So yeah, no, it is a fear in terms of having kids and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's always been my biggest fear as well.
Yeah.
I didn't experience it firsthand. It didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
But I happened to come from a family where both my parents lost almost all their siblings.
Oh my God.
And so I had the parents that raised their siblings' kids.
Yeah.
You know, and so for me, I got to witness up close the struggles of my siblings.
Yes.
The word cousin is forbidden in my family. We don't use the word cousin, but because of the siblings that I grew up with, I witnessed their struggle firsthand, and it traumatized me. Again, I realized as an adult that the reason I've never wanted kids, even now I still
on the fence
debate with the idea. I'm still every time I think about it, I still think of, oh my gosh, I am mortal. Yeah. I could die. And I did, again, like my siblings, like you, grew up in loving homes. They didn't lack anything, but still, I still saw firsthand that struggle of that loss and the struggle with it. And, you know, it's so real to me.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't want to die and leave, you know, a child behind.
Yeah, honestly, I say that my desire and my prayer is that no child should grow up without their parents, at least even one, you know.
So what brings me comfort now is Wycliffe, just the way that he is. He's, at least I know that they will be fine if something happens to me. There's that much comfort. Yeah. I'm not all the way there. Yeah. I'm not even halfway there. But you know.
He's a good man. Yeah.
So it brings me comfort, a lot of comfort. Yeah. Will I overcome it? Maybe. Maybe the universe will just surprise me one day with a package and I'll have nothing to do with it. I try not to overthink it, but
Yeah. But also in terms of dealing with Wycliffe, because I also feel like there's also that flip side of dealing with your husband. If you've experienced grief, especially from a very young age, I feel like it's a feeling you just never want to go through. Like, it's fine, you can lose relatives that are far, but when it comes to your inner circle, you feel like, God, Bambi, I'm not your strong soldier, like Bambi, peace, I'm done. So it makes you, I feel like with me, I also feel like I'm extremely protective of my husband. And I mean, he's a man. grown, makes his own decisions. I don't even live with him 24/7, so I really can't control. But it's just when I'm around and like he tells me, oh, maybe I'm still somewhere at midnight. I'm like, now I start to catastrophize. What
He's going to die.
You're driving in the night, then a big truck comes and it rams you off the road, and now like I'm so.
And then you have this whole.
And then I have that, and I'm like, babe, you need to go home. It's late. Yeah, you go. And it's like, I'm fine. And in my head, I'm like, what if Baba Ziku come and they find you on the road? Like, so you end up having, like, it's like you go there quickly.
Yeah.
You know, so every time I go there, I'm like, God, no, that is I call my mind back and say, no, my husband is fine. He will live a long life. So I have to affirm myself in the word, you know, a lot more than I guess someone probably that's not their reality, you know. So yeah.
I find that for me, I find myself recoiling because I'm just like, if this man dies, and I depend on him too much because you've seen him. He just came into my life and just took over everything, right? So the only thing I have to do is breathe.
Yeah.
And he's got literally everything around me. And then I start to find myself, again, something that I realized in therapy, I find myself pulling back sometimes. And I wasn't understanding why this was happening. And then I realized that I actually fear that if this man wakes up tomorrow and dies.
Yeah, God forbid.
You
But
know, yeah, the fear. And I saw a video a few days ago on Instagram that said that that's how you know you're in a healthy relationship, where your fear is actually about the person dying, not about, you know.
Come on, those are, thankfully.
Yeah, it's just about them dying because of how much, how special they are and how
integrated and healthy.
So I find that is also, a paralyzing fear to the point that sometimes I find myself pushing him away because, if you die tomorrow, I need to be able to heal. No, I need to be able to heal, you know, and it's toxic.
Very toxic. Thank God you're in therapy.
Yeah, it's toxic.
It's extremely toxic. So how are you overcoming that? But also, let's first, there's also another bit on the working thing. You know how, like, I remember when, and I unpacked this also in therapy. I remember when there was a time when and like the whole idea of like women staying at home and blah, blah, blah. One of my greatest fears for me, and I think why I was very strong and said I will never be a stay-at-home wife or mother, was because my dad was there one day. My dad wasn't there the next. You know, and I saw how my mom, she was a young wife, you know, and in my head I was like, that now my adult self goes back and like, that must have been difficult for her. Yeah. You have 2 children, they are young children, you are a young wife, and boom, your husband has just gone. It must have been so difficult for her to deal with. So for me, and that's why my strong sense of I need to work, I need to make it on my own, I need to have my stuff going, is because I experienced it. Yeah. I experienced it. One day my dad is well, I go to school, I come back, my dad is in hospital. He never comes back. So I'm like, what if it happens to me? You know? So yeah, and I think that the way we relate and the decisions we make most times are informed by some of the things that probably happened to us. So I'm curious about yourself in terms of relating with like your work ethic in your marriage. Like, do you ever force yourself at one point being a stay-at-home, you know, wife or mom or whatever?
Yeah, it could never be me. Well, I can't say never. Yeah. But since I was little, I've always been told you must work. Yeah. You must have your own money. There was a time when I considered being a stay-at-home mom or wife when I was getting married.
But your dad used to provide everything for your mom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But she was still working. Yeah. He used to pay for everything, but she was still working.
And even when he died, your life was not altered.
No,
the quality
of
life was not changed. Because like for you know, and that's a fear that for me, I was like, your life can just flip. Yeah. Before you know it, you're like being pulled out of your schools, you're leaving your homes. Because that's the right of many other people, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, by the time my dad died, we were married and out of the house.
Yeah. So that was good.
Not much changed. Yeah. Nothing at all changed. Yeah. Do you see yourself looking for bits of your dad in your partner?
You know, and unlike you, who remembers or knew your dad, my dad died when I was young. Yeah. So I know that my dad was tall, so I've always dated tall men. Yeah. Mm-hmm. My dad was tall. My dad was brilliant and smart. I remember that. And what I remember is my dad loved his whiskey.
Yeah.
And my husband loves his whiskey.
Yeah.
And I didn't even consciously look for it. But when we started talking, he told me he loved whiskey. And the first gift I got him was his favorite bottle of whiskey. He loves his Yamazaki. So I literally had it shipped in because it was just so heartwarming for me. Because I always saw like whiskey as that manly, very cool, because that's what my dad used to drink, and I'd sit on his lap as he's drinking and watching wrestling. So I have very small memories of my dad. Yeah. I don't really have much. The only thing I know is he loved to travel. I still have his passport cover up to today. Oh. So I don't have so many memories. So when I was dating, I didn't really look, for that. But I think maybe subconsciously I was looking for someone who I could feel like I'm like, hey, I don't even know how to say that in English. Yeah. A sense of...
He feels like an exhale. Yes. Like you can relax.
Exactly. So I was looking for someone because in my head, every time I would have a challenge in life, I'd be like, Kale, my dad would have fixed this. Yes. Would he not? I don't know. But I just formed a romantic idea of who my father would have been and what he would have done. So I always gravitated towards men who are very resourceful, who would make me feel like I can put my shoulders down, because I feel like I have to have my game all the time. So when I'm with my partner, I would always need to be like, I don't need to plan. I can just, let it down. So yeah, I think that's why I gravitate towards my husband. I feel like he gives me that space for me to just calm down, which,
he's got this.
He's got this, So,
I don't think that we navigate towards our partners intentionally because we're looking for our
I think subconsciously,
it's a subconscious thing, because this is, for many of us, this is our only experience of manhood. Because otherwise you're dealing with your peers.
Yeah.
So for many of us, the only adult male that we have seen and watched is our father. And so we pick out the things about him that we like and we subconsciously. It's not like, even me, by the time I started to realize, oh my gosh, he's so much. It was a little bit in as you're getting to know each other.
That's true.
And then everybody else who would meet him would see it. And I'd just be like, at some point it was so freakish. I was just like, this is so weird. I'm used to it now. But in the beginning, I was just like, this is extremely strange. Is this, it was very, very strange. And yes, it was also an attraction to that feeling of safety. That feeling of he has got this. Because my dad had, he handled everything.
Yeah, and I think for many girls, when it comes to their fathers, that's how they experience. I mean, if your father is a healthy father and a healthy relationship with him, I think most fathers generally want to feel like that, to do those for their daughters. So yeah, and if you're a man and you're searching, a small tip. Get it.
No, but I feel like don't act also.
Of course, don't act, but just figure your stuff out and help your partner to figure their stuff out. Yeah.
I think one of the things that can be really helpful, because I'm finding that my grief is showing up a lot right now because of the phase of my life that I am in.
Yeah.
Like I said before, you've grown up in a family unit and now suddenly you're starting your own.
Yeah.
So it's only natural that you find yourself comparing the family that you're building or, benchmarking against the family that you grew up in.
Yeah.
So I find that I am thinking about my parents so much more.
Wow.
For the first time in my life, I'm thinking about their marriage. I'm thinking so much about growing up and this and that and trying to pick out those little things you liked and recreating them. And because now you're on the other side and now you know how they affected you, the things that were special to you and trying to recreate that. And I think that my partner just holding space for that grief, and now it feels like he knows my dad. He never met him, but it feels like so we have conversations about him. He will ask me questions, or he'll mention something that I mentioned before or that somebody else mentioned. So it's like he's present in our relationship, and I think that him holding space for that is it's a nice huge thing. Comfort to me as I totally agree. The motions. You do also though have to be careful not to
copy and not to put pressure on him to be
try and make him
the same person.
Yeah,
that's true, because it's not possible. And also just be extremely exhausting for him.
And stressful.
Yeah, like you need to allow him to be his own man.
It's too much pressure.
Yeah, it's too much pressure for anyone. I totally agree. I think for me also the fact that like when I would, in the beginning, when I would be so obsessed with my husband about, oh my God, babe, what if, like, and then he would just, come ground me and talk to me and say, you know what, God has us, God covers us with his precious blood. We are protected. And then also he would then bring Michael loves to joke. He'd be like, they live long in their family. Yeah. They live so long. And I think
he has great grandparents.
Like his parents, 93. Over, one of his parents was like the Bakulu, they're Bajaja, very, very Jaja. So I think God was in his own way trying to say, look, now that family you've married into, they have a blessing of long life. So tap into that blessing. So every time I'm like, Banange, Onang, he's like, Kakana, and family just say, we live long. His dad was 80, very strong. His grandparents, very strong and bakade. So I just keep affirming myself and say, you know what? It brings me so much comfort because I'm a spirit. I mean, life is spiritual as far as I'm concerned. So I feel like if my in-laws are living that long, I'm also part of that last
associated
lineage. I'm associated by marriage. So I'm definitely gonna also live long, and my kids will also. So I keep my thing is I'm living up to 93 years old. Like that's what I tell God, because of all the trauma. I'm like, I will not die young. My kids will live. I will live to raise my kids. I'll live at 93 till 93. So amen. Yeah. Amen.
I only want to live until like 65.
What? No way.
I don't want to be old.
65?
I don't want to be old.
No, I want to see my great-grandkids because my dad didn't have that opportunity. I mean, you see my dad...
Okay, like 75.
Zeri, go to the 90s. Go to the 90s.
75.
No, go to the 90s. You need to see your great-grandkids. I even know how I want to die. I want to die at 93 after I've thrown a big, huge get together for all my children's children.
That's wonderful.
I go to God. I sleep.
That's wonderful. If I get it, well, but yeah, it's enough for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
what would you tell to somebody who's experiencing grief? No, first of all, before we go to the person who's experiencing grief, what would you share with a partner whose spouse is in the position that you're in? What advice would you give to the partner?
Okay, that's a good one. I think that each person experiences grief very differently. Yeah. So you hear some people say, like the person didn't mourn, didn't cry on the burial, but it hits them differently later on. So I feel like as a partner, hold space for your partner who's grieving. Do not have a timeline and say, 2 days, it's
enough.
It can work for some people, it may not work for others. But also be empathetic and be compassionate. And also remember that you will probably never understand if you've not been in their shoes. I can't explain to you the feeling of losing your father as a young girl. I can't. You must just experience it. So I feel like just be present. Be present, help to make their life easy as they grieve. They should not have to worry about every other thing now, So just be a present partner, hold them through it. I'm a woman of faith. Pray for them, because grief has a way of taking you into a pit that you may never come out of.
Only that peace that goes beyond
understanding can heal you. So I feel like pray for them above all. Because there's some things that there's words you can't say. Like, you just be there. Just be present. When they need you, be there. But above all, cover them in prayer. Because I feel like for me at least, it took God dealing with that. Like, I remember I would be in retreats. I'm that girl who was crying on the floor. I think people are thinking she's slain. People are thinking, Bambi, she loves God. I was crying out my grief. Yeah. So I feel like pray for your partner and let them be. Yeah, let them be.
Yeah, I think that's something we take for granted. Like, we don't give space for people to mourn.
Yeah, give them space. Yeah, give them space.
I know people get impatient with you sometimes. If you want to talk about your person and it just feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes that rushing you through is not because of anything other than discomfort. Of now when you start to cry, what do we do?
It's difficult. It's honestly difficult. And some of the reasons, like if you're grieving, you tend to protect.
Yes.
Like, for example, like I wouldn't tell my partner about like when we were preparing the wedding because I'm like, he's already dealing with a lot. Yeah. He's the one who's on ground. Now I take a timutani, oh babe, yesterday I cried, I miss daddy. Like poor guy. So you tend to want to protect your loved ones from your grief. Yeah. But sometimes it's okay
to be open.
And for them to see the depth of what you're dealing with. Yeah.
And also it just gives them a better space or a better footing to support you, to know what to do or to figure out what to say.
Yeah.
And it feels counterintuitive though.
It does.
Usually when you go through difficult things, you tend to want to.
Yeah. No, because I remember when I was younger. So of course my mothers who raised me, they also grieving their sister, This was their youngest sister, she had died. So you know what they would do? Remembering that, Bambi, my mothers, I love you. They would allow me, I would get all my parents' pictures, lay them on my bed. For one full day, I'm there crying. And they would just let me be. They would lock the room, they would come. Sometimes I would even pack my bags. We might go somewhere far away with my mom's pictures and my dad's. And I would just, and they just let me. So I feel like let your loved one grieve.
Yeah.
As long as it's healthy and it's not killing them, let them. Sometimes they want to lock themselves up in their room because it's only them who know how deep that pain goes. Yeah.
Okay. We can't add on to that, can we? It's been
an emotional,
really emotional episode.
Oh, me lunch.
I love you. So that's it for today.
Oh yeah,
it's been enjoyed the episode.
Yes, I did.
We hoped you enjoyed getting a little piece of our hearts, especially Priscilla's.
Yeah.
And as always, thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, comment, thumbs the video.
You're watching In This Season.